Keith Law from The Athletic set to join us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN as he wrote his rankings of the Major League Baseball farm systems for The Athletic the other day, and not favorable for the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's bring Keith in. And 5 years, Matt Klentak and Andy MacPhail have been here, Keith Law. And it doesn't seem like that farm system has really taken shape like you would thought it would when they got here.
Well, I'd say yes and no to that. I mean, yes, in that, look, they haven't drafted particularly well. And they've really had some trouble on the development front where guys get into the system and they're not getting better. Some are getting worse, but a lot of them simply aren't improving like they were expected to improve. So that is absolutely a problem. And I think it's probably the best criticism there is of the Klentak regime. Now, that said, they have also traded quite a few prospects, particularly, I mean, they cashed in Sixto Sanchez, and I think they probably did it at the right time, too. So they've used at least some of those prospects to try to make the major league team better. And that, to me, is one of the two main purposes of the farm system. You know, nobody gets a trophy for having the best farm system in Keith Law's eyes. You get a trophy for winning. And if you use the farm system, you trade those players, you get JT Realmuto, and he helps you win, great. Absolutely the right way to use a farm system. So they've done some of that. But I think the drafting and development, that's a real area of concern and something that I think Klentak, it would be fair to question and criticize him for that.
You know, I want to go back to 2016 when they had the number one pick in the draft, and we had, people complaining that how do you mess up the number one pick of the draft? Well, in baseball, it's not as cut and dry sometimes, but you get Mickey Moniak. Do you fault them for that? I mean, do you look back and say, man, they really made a mistake here? Or you look back and say, hey, look, there wasn't a clear-cut guy. That was kind of one player. They went with them. It hasn't worked out. Or do they get criticized for that?
I think both of those things are true, actually. There was not a clear-cut number one player in that draft. The player I thought was the best player in the draft, Corey Ray, has also not developed at all. That said, nobody thought Mickey Moniak was the best player in the draft class. So I think it's fair to criticize the Phillies and say there were a couple of guys who were sort of considered worthy of that first overall pick. None of them has turned out to be a star. Nick Senzel, who went second overall, has probably been the best of all of them. He's still not established. But that's, if you want to just do hindsight, that's the guy they should have taken. Now, what the Phillies at the time were trying to do, and I think they were pretty open about this, was put a deal with Moniak at the first pick, take some of the savings under that pick's assigned bonus value, and go overslot for the next couple of picks. They took a pitcher, Kevin Gaudi, with their next pick. He blew out almost immediately. Came back last year, but wasn't very good. I think this is a pivotal year to see if he's going to be any sort of prospect again. And then they went overslot on some other guys afterwards, and they were all duds. So I think as a whole, that draft class has been a real disaster for them. I still think Gaudi might have a chance. His stuff was back. He just wasn't throwing strikes. But you can't hang your whole draft class on a high school pitching draft who's already had Tommy John and still hadn't gotten out of Z-ball.
Yeah, Keith Law from The Athletic. The Phillies have the 9th worst farm system in the game, ranked number 22 overall, according to Keith. And, a lot of it is there's not very many guys. A couple of years ago, you and I would have these conversations, and we would just start ripping guys off. That doesn't mean they were any good, but at least other people thought they might have been good. It doesn't seem like the Phillies have guys right now that are even in that range. I mean, after Alec Boehm and Spencer Howard, I'm sure it's tough to even figure out who the clear-cut number 3 is.
Right. I mean, the guy I thought was sort of the big up-and-comer, the next possible star in the system, Luis Garcia. And for fans listening, I know every team has a Luis Garcia. This is a shortstop who played in Lakewood last year, not the shortstop in the Washington system, not the pitcher in the Houston system. But this one with Philadelphia, I really was very optimistic on him. Scouts who saw him in the Gulf Coast League the year before, he was 18 years old, he might have still been 17, said this kid might be a star. The Phillies promoted him from the Gulf Coast League all the way to Lakewood, and he was horrible. I saw him multiple times last year. He was not ready for the level. And I think I personally thought it was a mistake to jump in that high, and then it was a second mistake not to send him back down, maybe to Williamsport over the summer. He might still be the third best prospect in the system because he's certainly got ability, but the fact that you can't point to another guy with tools, with upside, and with some performance or production is an indictment of the system. The guys in the system who've produced don't have the high upside. The guys who have the high upsides really haven't produced.
All right, let's take a look at some of the guys we do know. And you have Spencer Howard ranked number 1 as your favorite guy. Most people in the audience, feel, oh, Alec Boehm, he's the guy. But you like Howard as maybe the best player they have in their system.
Yeah, I think he's got more upside. I think he's got a chance to be a number 2 starter. I think he's got a wipeout slider. I think he can show you an above-average curveball. He's definitely got an above-average fastball. Depending on what night you get him, you might see more than that. You might see premium velocity from him. Changeup is there. It's a work in progress, but I think it's there, and it's more than enough to make him a starter. He's got command. He's got feel. He's super aggressive. Really hasn't pitched all that much. He had some minor shoulder stuff last year, but it really wasn't serious. I saw him twice after his time on the injured list, and he was absolutely fine. He was throwing as hard as ever. That guy's got a chance to pitch towards the top of rotation. Nola's your 1, Howard's your 2 at some point. I like Alec Boehm a lot. I just don't think he has that kind of premium upside. I think he's more a steady, average to above average regular at third base.
We'll get more to Alec in just a second. I want to stick with Howard because Howard, as you mentioned, hasn't thrown a whole heck of a lot. Do you think he should be in the rotation this year? Would he be able to compete at this level right away?
Yes, I do think so. I don't know that he needs to be in the rotation right now. Right? I believe he finished at Double A. I saw him at Double A. Yeah, he did because he pitched in the Double A playoffs. I saw him about a week before the end of the Double A season, and he never moved up after that. Went and I saw him again in the Arizona Fall League. So he has not pitched in Triple A at all. So from that perspective, you could absolutely say we're going to start him at Triple A, let him make 5 starts there, and then call him up. I think that would be justified, especially because he hasn't pitched much above Lakewood, above low A. They did another strange development decision. They sent Howard, a college product, to Lakewood in his first full year. He dominated, and they never promoted him. That makes no sense. If you take a Division I college player in the second round of the draft, and he's not ready to go to Clearwater his first year out, you picked the wrong guy. Well, it turns out Howard was ready to go to Clearwater. They just never sent him there.
All right, Keith Law's with us from The Athletic looking at the Phillies. He has them as the 9th worst farm system in baseball. I don't think I disagree with you. I'm surprised they're even at that spot. Alec Boehm is in camp. He's hitting. He can hit. He struggles in the field, it sounds like right now. The people down in Clearwater, I don't think he's got a shot to make this roster. But do you see him major league ready with the bat at the least?
He made a hell of a play the other day, by the way. He went out. He was actually, I think, in foul territory, turned around, threw a strike to first base. So it's not out of the question that he's going to end up close to an average defensive third baseman in the big leagues. He's done a nice job getting his body into big league shape. He's shed some of the extra muscle that he had in college that was slowing him down. So I do like what I see from him there. I think he's probably ready by the middle of the season. Maybe he's ready now. He was a little bit challenged by Double-A pitching last year and didn't have enough of a chance to make that adjustment. Once again, college product, 3rd pick in the draft. I believe he started at Lakewood. It makes zero sense to me. That guy should have started at Clearwater so that he gets Double-A by the middle of the season and maybe even finishes in Triple-A, or at worst, starts the next season in Triple-A because he's already had a half year at Double-A. It's just these development decisions that they make. They make the most puzzling decisions of any organization I can think of, just in terms of where they assign guys, and it affects their timetables 2 and 3 years down the road.
The other guy who maybe people are understanding of who he is Bryson Scott, because he was a first-round pick. He also plays shortstop, by the way, which Luis Garcia does, and a couple of other prospects on this list. But what did you think of the pick of Stott and where he is right now as a professional?
I understood it. I think Stott has flaws as a player, but I understood the pick. I thought it was reasonable value for where they took him, a little bit higher than where I had him on my board, not enough to quibble with. Stott can play shortstop. He's absolutely a shortstop. He's got range both directions. He's got plenty of arm. I think his hands work. He seems to have good instincts. I think he's got some power. There's going to be some swing and miss. There's just some natural length to his swing. Just watch his hand path. He's going to take a little more time to get the bat head into the zone than you would like to see. And ultimately, unless that changes, it's going to hold down his batting average and his on-base percentage, which limits his value. But you can have a 300 on-base percentage with some power and play a good shortstop, and you can be a very good big leaguer for a long time. So I think he's probably their 3rd best prospect at this point.
Yeah.
It's him or Garcia, and it depends. You sort of pick your poison. Do you want the college guy where we have a pretty good handle on what he is, or are you willing to bet on Garcia's youth an eventual upside, even though he was so bad last year at Lakewood.
Now, Morales is interesting because, as you write, 98, and the best slider you said you saw in the minors last year, so that gets people excited. What is some of the drawbacks that's holding him back?
It's two things. One is he just does not throw a ton of strikes. He actually did the night I saw him so good. He threw, I think it was 3 or 4 innings. He only walked 1, punched out a slew of guys. It was up to 97. It was a top-end slider. It was just absolutely unhittable. He could have thrown those 2 pitches in the big leagues that night and missed a lot of bats. He does not throw enough strikes on a consistent basis. He was a little better last year, but I don't think he's ever really going to be enough of a strike thrower to start. And he doesn't have much of a third pitch at all. He can just dominate with those 2 pitches. He's never developed a sufficient changeup to think of him as a starter. They are probably going to still develop him as a starter. And in this case, I agree with them. I think it's probably good for him. Let him just simply throw more repetitions, more chances to work on his delivery, to try to throw more strikes, more chances to work on the changeup. Maybe I'm wrong. If he ends up a starter with that fastball slider and just has a fringy changeup to get lefties out, he could be a pretty good starter. I just think it's unlikely, even though it probably makes sense to leave him as a starter for now.
Keith Law from The Athletic. You can check out his Phillies farm system rankings. He's got him at The Athletic. And, of course, you look forward here. I want to go back to Moniak real quick, only because he was the number 1 pick, and people are going to wonder, do you see him as a guy who can make that jump and play at this level? Does he have any big league future?
He will play in the big leagues. I can promise you he'll play in the big leagues because they will make him play in the big leagues because he was the first overall pick. He might stay in the big leagues for a little while as a backup outfielder. I don't think he's going to be any more than that. Every year there are noises about how he's turned it around. He's changed his swing. His approach is better. It's not. I see him every year. I see him multiple times every year. He's the same guy. He really doesn't recognize spin at all. He has no power, and he's not going to have power with a closed-off stance like that. He's really not that good in center field. That was part of what was supposed to make him a top 10 overall talent in his draft class, but he's really not, and he's going to get pushed out. Frankly, he's not as good a center fielder as Simon Muzziotti, who's also in the system at about the same levels as he is. And if they're ever on the same roster again, Muzziotti is going to be the center fielder because he's a much better defender out there.
You think Hazley can play?
I think Hazley is probably he's a soft regular, more likely a quality extra outfielder. It depends on how good his defense in center is. Better than Moniak for me, not as good as Muzziotti. But Hazley's shown some ability to hit the ball hard, at least, and this is an exit velocity-focused game right now. It's the one chance I give him to be a starter.
Yeah, I mean, I just, over the years, we've talked about so many guys, the J.P. Crawfords, the Dominic Browns. They've had some high-level guys. And look, just because they're very good at one level doesn't mean they're going to make it. But it seems that the farm system is really a mess right now for this organization, and it seems like it has been like this for such a while.
Yes, well, again, it comes back to they had a couple of draft classes in a row where under Johnny Elmer as scouting director, they didn't do well in the first round in particular. And you're not going to hit on every single first round pick, but you got to hit on some of them. And they had a stretch. They've really not had a truly successful first round pick since Aaron Nola. And before him, I think you'd probably have to go all the way back to Cole Hamels. They've had guys who get to the big leagues, but not guys who justified being first round picks, if that makes sense. And to me, nothing can hurt your farm system as much as consistently underperforming in the draft. They've actually done much better from the second round on, but not enough to overcome the loss of value from those first-round picks.
Yeah, I mean, Kingery was a nice find in that second round, and I like what they did with him, buying out all the arbitration. I mean, that was kind of unprecedented, right?
It was really rare. We do not see that very often with players who haven't even gotten to the big leagues. Evan Longoria was probably the first. Seattle just did it with Evan White this offseason. The White Sox have done it now with Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert, which just means we're putting you on the opening day roster. We're not going to play these service time games, and I'm on board with that. With Kingery, I just want to see him installed at second base permanently. You're starting there 150 times this year. No moving you around the diamond. Just play there, play great defense, and hit.
Always good to catch up. Keith Law, The Athletic. Check it out. The Athletic. Get yourself a subscription. It's well worth it. And follow at Keith Law on Twitter. His Major League Baseball rankings for the farm systems, they are all up. You can check them out and just search for Keith at The Athletic. Thanks, pal.
My pleasure.
Always great stuff. The Athletic has them 22 in terms of the Phillies farm system. That's where they're ranked. And Keith Law does a great job. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.